Hello and welcome to week 38 on our catching up with Capricorn adventure. The exotic outpost, exotic indeed, and remote with, I think I'm enjoying the dark energy actually. I feel very comfortable in Capricorn energy. So I've got a photo of back in 2010 when I was in Egypt, Kemet, and apparently they repainted a lot of the paintings to lighten the skin tones. Yes. So Kemet with my son. This is me looking rough because I haven't been sleeping, and that's my boy Alex. He was 10 years old. I took him over there on invitation from one of my drawing students. Her family, her dad is Commission Egyptian, I guess I should say. He's Egyptian, and they invited us over to stay with them. And that's another connection I have that's through Mennonite. Well, it happens that one of my drawing students, her father worked for Mennonite Central Committee, so that's a third. I have, as much as I have ties through family to Sudan Interior Mission that I have to atone for, and then team that I have to atone for, so that connects me to Nigeria and Pakistan and India, and then through Mennonite Central, many people in my life connected me, and I was the first person to volunteer when they had their fair trade. I don't know if they still have it in the States, but in Canada they closed shop. They had a fair trade store. For a while it was called Global Gifts, and then they changed it to 10,000 Villages. And that was my first retail job that I volunteered for it for work experience and for a letter of recommendation. And that was my own bright idea to do that, and I was the first young person ever to volunteer. So I did have an excellent time in that, but we do have the conflicts of interest of mission work through the Mennonite Central Committee. So that ties into my time at Hatshepsut. But I'd always wanted to visit Hatshepsut's temple because I loved how they advanced the design of architecture into the rock surface, which ties into a place in Pakistan that I've just discovered thanks to someone on Quora when I was looking up the age of the Vedas. Huge discovery there on my part. I didn't achieve the discovery, but I discovered the person who publishes the discovery, and because he's the smart one. So I'll get into that soon. I'll get into that maybe the next video. But anyway, Hatshepsut's temple, because there is a dwarf minor planet in Capricornus that they've named Hatshepsut. So again, yet another dot to connect that I didn't anticipate. I'm not sure how we win this when there's endless dots to connect. But here's the fun that I had while catching up on Capricorn. I did all of this work. Yes, you can see that there's nothing printed here, and you can see that there are now 2 versions of this page. Yes. Why? Because I was listening to a reading while I was finishing up, and I didn't turn the page correctly when it came time to print. So I had done this work. I typically print this page up before I edit the photos in, and I printed on this page over top all the catch-up work that I'd done. I had just filled all of this in one day to catch up on not having filled it in while we were backlogged with Taurus's root work. Yes. So then I go back and I read through black ink what I wrote in pencil, and I copy it back out. I reprinted this page, both pages obviously, and so continuing luck and fortunes. Now I know that it's a Bharani thing, Bharani Nakshatra thing, primarily, not necessarily a Capricorn experience for me, but my Bharani star that I'm born under in Aries, they always have delays in everything. There's always going to be stumbling blocks finishing any project for us. So that is something to know about anybody born in the last nakshatra. Well, no, not the last. The central nakshatra of our Aries. Does that make sense? Yeah, because it finishes in Kritika. Yeah, okay. So, Hatshepsut's temple. Hatshepsut. Here is Hatshepsut. I've got a printout. What I did is I found a website that lists, there are apparently 18 stars in Capricornus that host planets. And I can't find half of them in the app, in Stellarium, or did I check Sky Safari? I'm not sure I went as far as to check Sky Safari. But I found maybe a third of them. Okay. And then I got screenshots of, I think I've got screenshots included here of most of the stars that I did find in the app. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, that's Ceres over there. Sybil, isn't it? Yeah, another, that's one of the actual planets. And she is right there. So we have Hatshepsut and Sybil. There are 2 planets there. Saturn I put in just because Saturn's been there for so long lately, of course, because Saturn's on a longer cycle. And then we have the Saturn Nebula. And I've got a printout of that and the information from... did I go to Sky Safari for that information? Yes, because I like Jim Kaler's info. But so the Saturn Nebula is over here. I printed up a little screenshot of the Capricornus Void. It's a big map. In order to fit it on here and make room for other things, I cropped the image down. Like there'd be that much more around it with other voids showing. Especially down here, down in this part of this image, there'd be like the Virgo supercluster, just to give you orientation, but there was no point in trying to include that much with what I'm doing here, right? This is just like a little overview. So, the stars. What else do I want to say? There's a cluster here that I didn't find in all sources. What is it called? The Palomar. So I came across a new channel. And I'll hold all of these up so you can see better what I'm saying. But Go Astronomy. And they highlighted the Palomar 12 globular cluster in Capricornus. And presumably that is an accurate photo of that particular cluster. I have no way to verify that. But it's somewhere down in here. I have to remember to go back into their map. I took a screenshot of that, but I couldn't fit everything on here. So let's just do a little close-up. So there's Hatshepsut, and so putting her over here, though, the question is, why particularly Hatshepsut? Very industrious pharaoh, absolutely she was, and focused on trade rather than war. Although we could say trade is so often a more effective means of long-term war, isn't it? But so puts her next to Tau Capricorni star, this one. So I don't know exactly how accurate I am. I'm doing the usual thing of how I would divide by usual thing, like I've been doing this forever. Divide the constellation through the nakshatra. Like typically the central nakshatra, right, is going to take up about more than half of the constellation, right? Because they divide the sky equally 27 times into 30 degrees. No, how does that work? It doesn't. They divide it 27 times equally, right? For 27 lunar houses, what the nakshatra are. So we have Uttara, Ashada here. Then we have Shravana here, and then we have Dhanishta. Roughly there, right? Somewhere there. Like the line might be moving somewhat to the right and somewhat to the left. But there are several... The stars are not all... Like, there are huge differences in the distances of these stars. And for some reason... Oh, I know why. Stellarium didn't connect these two. with a line. And that's what I missed when I was printing it. I forgot. I don't know why. I don't know why I stayed with that and realized, well, why wouldn't you? And then, of course, other versions of the constellation close it off here and here. And they actually go here in other versions of the constellation. So, you know, just so that we're all in agreement, you know. Saturn's moon's there. Not that Saturn will always be there, but what else can I take away from this? We have the star that is like Algeti Secunda up here, the billy goat, the kid. In Chinese astrology, second star of the ox. These, we've got binary over here that orbit each other. They're 330 light years away. So the butchers, that's a fun sounding star. How did it end up with that? I can't remember. Or I don't know that I know yet. Oh yeah, the fun of Omicron. Here we go. Now, Omicron, I've found out there's a connection between, there's a video on YouTube, sorry about the crashing outside with whatever they're working on now. But the Omicron, there's a connection between Omicron and Scorpius, and then the ongoing feud between Scorpius and Orion in the sky, yes? And so why ever they're invoking, if it's just seasonal, for this new variant, right? Whatever cosmic energy they're invoking for it involves Scorpio energy. So that's very interesting. No accident, of course, and completely cult. As usual with all that they do. What else is interesting? No, I do like to keep track of what colors and whether they are, what kind of energy they have if they're binary variables, because that means that there's more than one star there. Sometimes they're at a distance from each other. Bearer of good news star, Gamma Capricorni, Nishira. Nishira, right here, the bearer of good news. Danab al-Jadi, tail of the goat. So, oh yes, right, and similar to Algol, which sent me on a journey to Algol. Algol is over by Taurus again in Perseus, the head of Medusa, which takes us back to the smear campaign of the Delphi oracles, the African prophetesses, right? And it gave me further evidence of what they hide inside their mythology about stealing the traditions from, because they steal from Medusa's head, right, her snake hair, which we can easily reinterpret to be dreads, and the fact that the African prophetesses were associated with snakes because snake had a whole other meaning in African religions and spiritual practices. It represented life and truth and all kinds of good things, right? But when they, from her, and she was, she ends up cursed by Athena, right? She ends up raped by Poseidon in Athena's temple. So this is all metaphorical, right? And then impregnated, and then Athena's in a rage and curses her, because that's what any good person would do, yeah. Curses her from being gorgeous to being hideous. So we'd have to say Athena's just actually, there's a curse, but clearly you can't turn a person ugly. So what you can do is strip them of their place in history and their power and their future. And so from her head, they take what's both medicine and poison, and she gives the medicine and poison to, what's his face, Asclepius, okay, for his medical practice. Right, the Asclepius that doesn't exist, the Asclepius with Asclepius staff, that is the symbol for half the healthcare organizations, including the World Health Organization. So here we have another admission through their so-called mythology of what they've stolen in medical practice and religious practice and authority and power. They've stolen it and they hide it in a story, and thank you for hiding it in a story, because it's an admission of guilt. There's a further admission of guilt to come when we get into the sign information of Capricornus. But so just to get up close here, I do keep track of some information, so I kept track of what they could tell me about Hatshepsut, and I can look into that more at my leisure. The Saturn Nebula, right? So over here, yeah, it's about IC 1337, the galaxy. And then these are stars with planets. So where did I find, okay, the website is universeguide.com, and I've cropped down to the basic information, but they do list the stars, and I have that list. I was going to include it, but it wasn't compelling enough to look at visually, like in this little box here, so I cut it out. But yeah, 18 exoplanets in this list for Capricornus. One page says 16, but when you get to the list itself, it says 18. So the question is, how many known exoplanets are in the other constellations that my research hasn't led me to know yet. So HD and then they go by different names sometimes. They give multiple names in the list, but and it was in typing in one of the star names from this list is how I discovered Hatshepsut, because when you type into the search bar, it starts giving you possible solutions, right, based on the letters you're typing in. And so it wasn't giving me what I was typing in, but it gave me Hatshepsut, and that's how I found her. So I think that's probably, for now, that's a lot to cope with and to know. It's a busy spot. And somewhere nearby, now how exactly this Capricornus Void relates in space, it's going to be way, way farther out, yes? We're talking on the scale, we've like backed all the way out to see where these voids are in our galaxy or around our galaxy, right? But this is part of our experience, very much so. And there's that Taurus void, so which is further down here. Do I have it? No, they don't go so far down. I cropped it out, the Virgo supercluster. And the Taurus void would be down here, somewhere between the Virgo supercluster and the Perseus Pisces supercluster, or super void. I'm trying to remember which one, but there we are. So next, I pulled out the void page again, just to capture the moment, because why? Because I've had a further affirmation. Yes, this is what I need to, okay, bear with me. Okay, so in between doing all of this and what I'm about to show you, my dad had a lucid dream, and he was visited by people that were appearing to be refugees, but they're not. They're appearing that way in the dream to pull him into a certain receptivity, okay? And they're in a house. They take him into a house that doesn't exist, because it's located specifically for him behind the Salvation Army Citadel that he grew up in, and the University of Winnipeg, which is directly behind that citadel. There is no place for a house where they show it to him, okay? So what I interpreted that to mean was that we're talking about consciousness house as awareness, state of mind, yes, which has been a long established symbolism, okay, especially in dream interpretations. But so I said, okay, so what they're doing is they're getting you to compare the knowledge base that you have, that of course he was as much traumatized by as anything else, all the years in the Salvation Army. And then his philosophy education, he was a U of Manitoba guy, not a U of W guy. But, you know, the proximity of the U of W to the Citadel establishes the same, you know, foundation for what they're trying to communicate. We're talking about levels of awareness, right? And schools of thought. And so they bring him into this room, or he's looking through basically a window that shouldn't be a window, or an opening into this room. And one of the people has an injured ear. Now, one of the nakshatra in Capricorn, and he is a Capricorn sun. He's an Aquarius with a Capricorn sun, and he's a Gemini rising. But I believe it's Shravana, one of the symbols for the Shravana nakshatra, which is the central nakshatra for Capricornus. That's right where Saturn is right now, plus Hatshepsut and Cybele. One of the symbols for that is the ear. And one of the people in his dream, now I haven't told him any of this ahead of time, and I didn't even know it probably at the time that he was having the dream. I still hadn't researched it yet. Or, no, I had, but it wasn't necessarily on the radar. Well, I wasn't thinking of it. Well, let's see. These things are working together. Let's put it that way. We're within weeks of each other, okay? And so one of the people in his communicating to him has a wounded ear, and they're tending to the wounded ear. So I said, okay, so I pointed out to him that it's a symbol of the nakshatra, and that the point of the ear is that people connected to the nakshatra are especially advised to listen closely and just follow God, like directly, like listen directly, listen to guides directly. There's a special emphasis there. And so I said, okay, so they're wanting you, and then I said, well, can you describe roughly what kind of people, you know, where you feel like they're coming from? And he has a friend who's from Afghanistan in his men's group at his church that I left back in 2006. And I just finished the work. I could get that page as well. Yeah, hang on. Yep, and I just finished the work, right, on documenting what they just led me to from our longtime friend Bob Blanchard. And what was I saying about being connected to team, and then what I owe Pakistan and India. And he had been called, he had exactly the same experience as me, having a voice in his head that wasn't audible but unmistakable in his own words, right? And the whole journey that I just finished describing in the final videos of Taurus, of the journey that he took based on getting that message, and versus the journey I took based on getting that message. And he didn't question the voice. And then after I reported my experience, it basically set me on a very specific path, as specific as his was. He fulfilled it, and the question for me would be, okay, who was it and why did you end up? Now, he was specific at the time about missioning through medically, and he ended up being the head surgeon at the Health Sciences Center here in Winnipeg, okay? He did mission work for 5 years in Pakistan, but Muslims was the specificity of what was put to him. And then it very quickly, within a couple of years, was absolutely specific through events to being Pakistan. And he brought, later on in his life, I came into existence, and I spent significant amounts of time in his home with his wife, Madeline, and I looked after his grandkids, while his son while their son was preparing to open the first AIDS clinic in India with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation money that his partner secured, not him. But anyway, so there again, that's why India. But point being, because I spent so much time in their home, I loved everything that was Pakistan, because their home was full of Pakistani things, very comfortable, cozy, warm, and they had constantly had people over, connected to Pakistan and various other countries as well. They're connected to several continents. But they brought, just like my cousins brought Nigeria to me, and all the wrong that's been done to Nigeria, everywhere else as well, but specifically, right? So the Orisha, they bring the Orisha to me, and these guys brought Pakistan and probably Kali to me, yes? So everything's pulling together in terms of truth, pulling into a wholeness here, yes, through evidence. Other things, because then the question was, why Pakistan, right? It's not to go afflict. He needed Pakistan as much as Pakistan needed his medical help. You know, did Pakistan need another missionary? Doubtful. Did they need the medical help? Yes. Did he need to be connected to Pakistani, basically that whole region, their energies, and have they brought me into it for my own reasons and their own reasons? Yes, completely. So I just finished doing that, and I'm like, well, Dad, now they have, the point being, another point being, that he and my dad, another guy, formed this group, and they've been holding on to it online all through lockdown, right? And there's Farhad from Afghanistan that's in this group, and he's so good at pushing everybody into like waking up, right? But so that gave Dad somebody to liken these people to, and he's like, well, remind me of Farhad. I'm like, okay, all right. Now Dad had also been doing this root work of sanding this chair down for months and months last year that we've always had, okay? And then after he had finished it a few months ago, I went and photographed it because I had discovered that photo of the Audubon ballroom where Malcolm X was assassinated, right? And then there's all ties that link to, where is it? Yes, Malika's, right? So we've already covered this ground in other videos, so I only want to like just sort of do this briefly to connect the dots, okay? But Dad did all of that work, and it was a very spiritual experience for him, and he didn't know, neither of us knew. And I had not seen this photo in all of my Malcolm X research. For whatever reason, it hadn't stayed with me. I hadn't remembered it, and then because of the work I was doing for both books, I came across it, right? I was led to it. And then like, Dad, you want to know about this chair? It's not the same chair, I'm not saying, but it's exactly the same chair, you know? It's not, but it is, it's cousin, right? So, all of these things that are pulling together, this is the citadel in his dream. This is the one that my grandma, his mother, was the pianist at for like 50 plus years, okay? So I had just finished all of this work, right? And now we add to it, but it's all there ready to go. And this church, St. Matthew's, which I forgot to name when I was talking about it, my happy place, because of the people in it, not because it's Anglican, because the Anglican Church isn't actually allowed to function over here anymore. Neither most of the churches. I would say the Salvation Army shouldn't either, and neither the Catholic Church, obviously. But this woman, I do believe, is the woman who was extremely, exceptionally lovely to me at the time that I was there. I was ages 7 to 9 when I was there. And I had the time of my life playing with her sons. I just fit in so well, and I was just part of the team, and it was just it's the only time I felt that amazing for that long. But this church is just blocks away from the location of this dream that he's having between the U of W. So there's all that energy connecting to it as well. And so what I get led to, and I recognize it through these images, this void, right? The journey that we're on. is when I look up the age of the Vedas, and I've got to give him credit. Let me just get him on the phone. No, I'm not calling him up, but let me see if I can, on Quora, look up Krishna Iyer. Okay, this is somebody I am going to end up giving tons of credit to and rely on. Okay, where does it go? Because I looked up how old are the Vedas, and I did not know that this place exists. So this is further to the Hatshepsut experience. This is over in Pakistan. So within days of everything, they've led me to this on top of the rest of the work, right? Okay. I'm like, well, we're going to have to look this up. And that's Hingal. On the coast of Pakistan, Hingal National Park, okay? But that's not all that Krishna gives me. The Hindu seals. What he proves is that what we're trying to cope with spiritually is actually particle physics and astrophysics. These are some of the pictograms from the seals, and that he is showing how they completely articulate particle physics and astrophysics. He's like, no, the Upanishads tell us there's one God. And where did I find? I went through, basically, I just went to him, his profile, right? So again, I'll get his name for you again. But all of this, okay? Now, but here we are with all of these thousands of years ago. These drawings are made, these carvings, these seals, yes, just like these. These are some of them, right? And they are all capturing. And here, what do we have? Do we have basically the donut? Do we have the loop? Do we have the shape of the universe? I believe we do, which takes us to Celtic knots. You can see Celtic. So we know that there's definitely a connection between the Celtic and the Hindu, right? So this is all thanks to Krishna Iyer. So I recommend him. He has excellent answers. It's not like I don't have to agree with him on everything, but that's the whole why. Well, nobody needs to agree completely on everything. But so because of him mentioning Hingal, right? I go to it. What's the first thing that shows up? Photo like this, right? Like here's where it is. I just put it into maps. And next thing you know, I'm looking at a highway shot that's reminding me totally of the highway shot from the Voids and Super Voids video. The most terrifying places in the universe, voids and super voids. Insane curiosity, okay? And that was like, wait a minute. That brings a shot to mind. And why does that matter? Just because I was channeling noodle energy because I was feeling like totally in the overload, just like they're singing about in the song when she gets the gunshot wound to the head, right? But then we have Capricornus Void and Taurus Void. So this is what we do, right? And here's how phenomenal this area is. Can I give credit? Yes. Okay, this is just from the Google results. Now what's interesting, as an art history student and as a drawing instructor, this is the first I've seen of that Sphinx. And in the photos that everybody uploads of their experiences there, I don't see the Sphinx. I kind of feel like the internet is censoring photos of that Sphinx. They're allowing everything else through. But they're not allowing. Look at this landscape. Look at it. They're sending me such strong messages, okay? This is not an accident. So whatever happened and whatever's the story with the Indus Valley seals, okay, that's why it's not, it's because we have pure answers about things. Communication was made. Was that the great architect fucking with us? Most likely. Trust people that are industrious enough, inclined enough to run with it, develop it, build a whole civilization out of it. You know, it's a certain kind of predilection. But there we have it, okay? No, I mean, we know, like I know from home team history, if you look them up on YouTube, iron was readily used in Africa before anybody else was using it. Like they went through an insanely quick development period of knowing how to produce iron and build with it, you know, work with it. So, you know, everybody somewhere has something completely miraculous to tell and to prove, right? But that's the story of where we get with the constellation information. And now for the sign information, which complements, I don't think I'm gonna get to sit down at all in this session, but this will only be a few more minutes. Okay, the number of goats that are connected to this, I think we got at least 4, but there's also the problem of a lot of misinformation. Now we have, is it Amalthea? Okay, I got this from Capricorn on Ovo Video, right? In the description below the video gives the story of Amalthea, who raised Zeus. She's the goat that Zeus was handed to, kind of like Moses, right? Can you raise this baby, because all his brothers and sisters have been eaten by his father, and we want him to survive, hopefully, right? And that would be the story, some version of the story of Sargon, I believe, as well. But what we're really talking about is transfer of knowledge. So we have this goat, Amalthea, that raises Zeus in the cave, and the ability to persevere and be strong alone in dark places, in caves, and, you know, basically make all the difference, all that energy of Capricorn there. In thanks for all that she does, she also sacrifices herself because her skin is impenetrable, or it is, yeah, it's something like that. It's ultimate protection for Zeus, so she sacrifices herself. She's like, kill me and then wear my skin and you'll be safe, right? Good times. Always kill them. Always sacrifice the mother. And don't let me trigger you if you have a really crappy mother, okay? I know. We're talking about divine, like we're talking about God, mother as God, God as mother, yes? So, we have that goat. Then we have Pan. Now what's interesting about Pan, and he helps, again, Zeus. Now why? But anyway, there's the attack of Typhon, right? And that's how Pan's half in the water, and that's how he ends up with a fishtail. Okay, then we have Picus, or Pricus. It would probably be a K. And the father, the goat, the sea goat father, who didn't want his children to become pure goats. And every time that they went on land, he reversed time the one time to stop them and keep them in the sea. And he didn't want to be alone. And he thought that they were idiots if they became regular goats. So he tried to manipulate them, but then they refused to be manipulated. And then he begged to die because he didn't want to be alone. So a guy that really struggles with relationships and just is completely controlling and doesn't trust people to like him, but doesn't seem like there's much to like. So of course his children want to escape because he's got a death grip on them, and he's willing to manipulate time to stop them from being free. Great energy there. So, and then of course, Zeus likes them. Right? Because Zeus is such an awesome guy. But what's interesting is that we think that Capricorn's a satyr. A satyr. He's not. The pains. We find out about the pains. If I'm saying it wrong, I'm saying it wrong. But they're connected to Pan. Now they're connected to the satyr. Satyrs, the satyroi. But the satyrs have ass tails and ears. Not goat tails and ears. The pains have the goat tails and ears. So this is my mind blown, because 43 years I've thought of Pan as a satyr, but he's not, because he's a goat, not an ass. So because I picked up on that and followed that, right, and wonderfultheoi.com, okay, because you pick up on the details, then you go to a page that's called The Pains and the Indian War of Dionysus. Now, what the hell could have gone wrong between India and Greece? I wonder. Could we have, in mythological context, the story of stealing the knowledge and then trying to paint India as the bad guy, because that's convenient if you're going to steal their knowledge base and pass it off as yours. So we have Athena ripping off the African prophetesses and giving their powers to Asclepius. Yes. Now the Greek healer that he's the hermit. He's got the magic cave with the magic snakes that will lick you and heal you. Okay. So now we've got Africa all wrapped up, and then of course we tie that up with a bow in Egypt rather than calling it Kemet. And then we have what we can say is the stealing of the information from the Indus Valley. This is why Alexandria Library burns down twice. And basically we have descriptions that it's like, now is this how we end up with ideas of these goat and ass people? Don't know. Don't know. But kind of interesting that they're all tied together, isn't it? Now they are coming from Greece and they're fighting, okay? But we could say, if this is all symbolic of the transfer of knowledge, yes? Okay? The theft of knowledge. So it's just wonderful. It's just wonderful when the storytelling does its job of telling the story. And you're like, and now I know how to read between the lines. So that's there we go with more goats. Okay, they're not the satyrs. So it's, when we're looking at the devil card, we're looking at a Pain. We're looking at a Pan, and Pan is not a satyr. So it's important to know these things. Now, Egyptian priest. This is in the notes to Aegipan, another goat. Okay, somewhere here I have him. Eros riding Aegipan, Greco-Roman mosaic, National Roman Museum. One of the goat-legged Pains, right? Because he'd have to be. When they're fighting, I think it's Typhon again, or it is Typhoeus. Is that different? I don't think so. Yeah, no, they hid themselves in animal forms. He assumed the form of a fish-tailed goat, and he stole back Zeus's severed sinews from Typhoeus, and as a reward, he was placed amongst the stars as Capricornus. Now, is Aegipan the same then as Pan? Right? But over here, we have, yeah, we have Aegipan and Pan. But what's interesting, Age of Pan was often identified with Pan, but in at least one Athenian vase painting, the two appear side by side as distinct divinities in the retinue of Dionysus. So that's two Pans that rescued Zeus from Typhon. They can never make up their minds. Okay. But then, of course, and then he's got this connection to Eros, who is the child of Mars and Venus, I believe. Yes. Now we have Egyptian priests and some poets say, okay, well, we meet in Commission. Or if we're talking about Roman, Egyptian, then, you know, not really truly Egyptian. Okay, but here we have connecting to Africa again, the story where, now let me just read it out. Once when many gods had assembled in Egypt, suddenly Typhon, an exceedingly fierce monster and deadly enemy of the gods, came to that place. Transfer of knowledge story again. Theft of knowledge, right? Yes. A huge monster came. Terrified by him, they changed their shapes into other forms. Yes, they changed identities. Right? This is what we mean when we say that we're taking what's yours and we're calling it ours now. And we're going to create an epic around it that people will believe is the original mythology. And they'll dismiss it as mythology and not whitewashed history. And there we go. We've got the zodiac wrapped up. We've got history wrapped up. Yeah. This is why we study astrology. Not just for the magic of it, in the one sense, but in the sense of, hey, we are getting the truth. Yay. Okay, so that is the week of the constellation and the sign of Capricorn, us and Capricorn. And I feel like very powerful. Very, very powerful. I'm like totally thrilled with that. I had no idea that it would meet with that kind of result. So thank you, Krishna Iyer and theoi.com for that amazing amount of information that just pretty much draws a line under everything. Okay, back soon with week 39, which will be your 10th house in Capricorn in your birth chart. I believe? Yes. Okay. Much love.